Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Web3 Big Bites podcast, the podcast where we jam to the latest beats in the decentralized world, exploring the far outreaches of digital reality and chatting with some of the brilliant minds in the industry. Get ready for an exciting episode of our podcast because we have a very special guest joining us this week. I am thrilled to introduce you to Olabinjo Adeniro, an expert in marketing with a decade of experience under his belt. Olabinjo has worked with both local and international Web2 and Web3 startups, driving growth across various platforms, and is truly passionate about driving digital acquisition and retention programs for startups. If you're listening to this show right now, I want you to get ready to be inspired by his wealth of knowledge and expertise in the world of Web2 and Web3 marketing. Welcome to the Web3 Big Bites podcast, and I'm glad you could join us today.
Yes, hi. Thank you so much for having me today.
Wow.
Excited to be here.
Yeah, likewise. So today we are going to discuss an important topic that has raised questions among Web2 marketers who are looking to transition into Web3, and even amongst Web3 marketers who are also looking to explore further opportunities within the space. Our topic today is Beyond Digital Marketing, exploring Web3 opportunities for marketers. So, Olabinjo, but before we go in deeper in our discussion, our topic for today, can you share about your journey in building a career in Web3 as a marketer and how you got started in this emerging field?
Yeah, thank you so much. So my journey is very unique and very interesting because I've always worked in tech. So I've always worked for startups and I've worked for tech companies for most of my career. At a point, I was pursuing a software developer profession or career, but I was always doing marketing along the side. So I've been able to. I would say I've been very lucky to be able to merge both, and be a growth marketer and sometimes a product marketer for companies. And so in my career, there hasn't really been a dichotomy. I would say I have a Web2 career. I've just worked for tech companies. And so because I work for tech companies, I'm always very, very lucky or very blessed to work on companies that are doing really new stuff at the edge of whatever new technology is explorable, right? I first heard about, I think my first entry into the space was when I heard about Bitcoin sometime in 2014. I had gone to hang out with one of my former bosses, and he was telling me about how he was able to, there was a problem with sending money to his brother in Germany, and he realized he could use Bitcoin. And my boss, just for some context, was very highly technical, very nerdy. So this is something that he would typically be interested about. So he bought some Bitcoin at a particular dollar price and sent it to his brother in Germany to pay for some stuff. And that was super interesting. So he was telling me that he had also kept some for himself just to hold because he thought the price was going to go up, and he was trying to get me to buy as well. But like at the time, I was trying to build a very small social media agency, so I wasn't interested in what that was about. But I do remember reading about it. And then my second exploration was in 2016. Yes, in my final year in university. I had now learned more about this Bitcoin thing, and I wanted to build a crypto exchange that basically allowed you buy and sell Bitcoin via mobile money. Because I went to school in Ghana and mobile money was the in thing. I tried multiple different times trying to build this thing, but it really didn't work out. And so I had to pivot and build another final year project, right? And so that was my second experience with Bitcoin. And my third experience was later in late 2017. Somebody I had worked with had started a new company, and their new company was going to be a crypto exchange. And I had worked with them. Like Bitcoin at the time in Nigeria is that if you wanted to buy, you had to go to a peer-to-peer exchange like Paxful, right? And what that meant is you had to often send somebody Bitcoin, wait for them to confirm, and they will send you Naira in return if you wanted to sell. Or if you wanted to buy, you send the person Naira, wait for them to confirm, and they will send you Bitcoin in return. And there was no escrow in between. right? And so this was a very big problem. A bunch of people were getting scammed on those platforms, right? They would send money and they would never receive value, and the seller would just disappear, right? So that was a really big thing, and they wanted to solve this problem. So what they built was one of the very first escrow-based crypto exchanges, and then we quickly found out that people didn't want escrow. People wanted to buy and sell instantly, so they quickly pivoted to be an instant buying and selling platform. And this platform was called Bitcoins. Bitcoins was one of the largest exchanges in Nigeria. I think up until last year when they exited that business and they now do other things. And so that was the time when I really got to work in that space. I really spent a lot of time learning, exploring, experimenting by my own self, downloading all kinds of wallets, buying crypto across multiple different platforms, sending Ethereum from one place to another, having to wait 1.5 hours for Ethereum to come in when there was the Crypto Kitties game that shut down the entire Ethereum network. Just all those experiences happened between late 2017 and 2018, where I was the marketing lead for Bitcoins. So that's my second deep experience. And then my other experience working in this space, there's 2 more experiences, but I don't know if we have enough time to say them. My other 2 experiences working in this space is that in mid-2019, I was contracted to help build a social crypto app called Bundle Africa, which is backed by Binance. And I was there for, I think, 7 months before my contract expired, and then went on to do something else. And then in 2022, I was hired as a product marketing manager for a Canadian company called Horizon Blockchain Games, who have built one of the most interesting and most user-friendly blockchain games. And because of that, they had, built the entire developer stack just to enable that game happen. And they had pushed that developer stack out as a separate product called Sequence. And so I was hired as a product marketing manager for Sequence, and Sequence is a developer toolkit and smart wallet for companies who want to build Web3 games. So yeah, that's basically my experience in this space. And in between these, I've worked in many other industries, specifically fintech, and started my own venture capital firm in 2019. So yeah, that's that's what my experience has been like.
Well, you're trying to be humble with it, but then I'm here oh my God, oh my goodness. That's what they call wealth of experience.
Thank
That's
you.
actually quite impressive, though. You have diverse experience across different industries. You've gotten to do cool stuff, cool nerdy stuff, if I can put it that way. Cool nerdy stuff. Well, thanks for sharing your journey, how it started, how it evolved, and then how you were able to work with all these cool companies and building cool stuff up to the very moment. Thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Oh, welcome. So let's move on to the next question. So what are the key skills and qualifications one needs to succeed as a marketer in the Web3 space? Actually particularly interested in the answer to this question, because for most Web2 marketers, they're like, okay, do I still have to use the same skills I have as a Web2 marketer, or do I have to learn something new entirely? Do I have to go start on learning what I've known before, or do I have to just go start from the bottom? I don't know, something like that. So what are the key skills and qualifications one needs to succeed as a marketer, especially in the Web3 space?
Yes, so I don't know if many people have different opinions, but for me, the skills and qualification as a marketer are the same as marketing in any other industry, which is you need to be able to communicate well so that you can attract attention from an audience, excite them about your product, and get them to use your product. Like those 3 things are the same, whether you're selling software, whether you're selling, I don't know, a laptop, right? But I think the one key difference so far in the Web3 space is you have to spend a lot of time educating your audience about cryptocurrency and blockchain, depending on how technical your product is and how much of exposure the user has to the technical aspect. So when I was working at Horizon, for example, we were constantly educating the developer audience about why they needed to use this thing, why it was important for their industry, gaming, and how it transformed gaming. But we also went deeper sometimes and would even do coding examples just to show how easy it was to integrate our software into the already existing tech stack. So education is probably the one thing. You might have been working somewhere else where you didn't have to educate your customers so much. But in this space, you have to constantly keep educating the customer. I think another thing that is also super important is because it's still a very new space, there's a lot of collaboration. So you're very lucky that there's often other brands who want to collaborate with you as a partner. They want to get on Twitter Spaces, they want to do something in Discord or something in Telegram or something on LinkedIn. So many brands want to collaborate. So it's an opportunity to be able to expand your audience that way. In your regular marketing job, you probably are more protective of your brand, and you're less likely to expose other brands to yours. But in the Web3 space, there's way more opportunities for collaboration. So that's something that is super encouraged. So one needs to learn, how can one partner with other brands? What are some initiatives that can help to build trust, or that can even drive an increase in audiences? That's super important. And then the final skill I will add is, I would say, patience, and just being patient enough to be able to wait and measure the results of your work or the fruits of the seeds that you planted, right? Because these things don't happen instantly, right? People just don't come and start using product. You have to spend a lot of time educating people, and then being patient to see them use, and even educating them on how to use your product itself, right? Aside from just general education about the Web3 space. So yes, that's the thing I will say is really, really important.
Okay. Because I'm actually heavy on the collaboration here, because the last podcast episode we brought on someone who is well versed in community building and growth, and that was the one thing he kept talking about. And in the Web3 space, collaboration is actually very, very important. And
Yeah,
when you collaborate with other people, you get more people to know about your products, your projects. Basically, more people
absolutely.
getting about your project. You also get to build a community of loyal users and everything. So communication, collaboration is highly important in the Web3 space. And for anybody, just like it's anybody coming into the Web3 space as a marketer, you have to be heavy on those two things: communicate, and learn to collaborate. There's no lone wolf in
Yeah,
Web3. You can't do it by yourself in the Web3 space. So that's also something I'd like to add. Yeah, the boss,
yeah,
yeah, I guess, but I should also add that. So,
no problem.
yeah, so traditional marketing, like everybody's familiar with traditional marketing, billboard, radio ads, TV ads, then coming down to digital marketing, our Facebook ad, SEO, and stuff like that, right? And so, how does marketing in Web3 differ from all these traditional marketing channels and digital marketing channels? How does it differ? And what do you think are the unique challenges and opportunities in this new digital landscape, Web3?
So, I mean, the very first thing that makes it very unique or very different is the legality of the product that you're selling, depending on the space and time. Depending on your type of product, many of the ad platforms simply don't allow you advertise. So Facebook, Google, many of the very popular ad platforms don't let you advertise. They will only let you advertise if you have certain licenses from certain countries that have defined the legality of whatever token or asset or whatever it is happening on your platform. And that makes it very difficult sometimes to be able to you just want to run your ads, right? But it makes it very difficult to run ads. So, and that means that one needs to be very careful how one crafts certain communication to the public. So at Horizon, for example, we had to be careful because we're not an exchange and we don't sell any tokens or assets. We only provide swaps. So we had to be careful with how we communicated to the public when we're running ads, just to make sure that our ads were approved. And so that's one thing to note. Like, you have to research the legality of how to say things in the country that you're trying to run your campaigns at. You can't just do a billboard. For example, in most countries, there's pretty some regulatory body that's going to come and write you an email or come and lock your office down just because the assets in Web3 can be very speculative. And then the opportunities are also still there. I think it's in the last year that we've seen a bunch of really large legacy companies try to do Web3 stuff, whether it's token rewards for people doing certain things, or it's even integrating Web3 elements into their services. So, for example, on Reddit, you can mint, which is you can basically just get an NFT as an avatar, and you don't have to do all of the really long processes. You just click. It's like literally a 2-click process, and they give you an NFT as an avatar. And so we've seen that happen. We've also seen companies like Starbucks do NFT rewards when people do certain things in their app, or purchase certain types of coffee, attend certain types of events. So I think that's going to become more popular. Tokenized rewards, just because companies want to reward people and people want to hold badges anyways, just to as a proof of, as a social proof, as a proof of value. Where it's not clear, I mentioned earlier, is the legality of some of these things. Are they securities? Are they commodities? Can they be traded? Is there taxes on them? And those are things that really make it sometimes very difficult to communicate to the public in this space. The rules, people asking you questions for certain things that, the legality is not sure yet, or the government hasn't decided what he wants to do yet. And so it requires Web3 marketers to be very well educated, stay up to date, very well educated with everything that's happening in their space. Also, it means they need to be very careful when they're working for companies, so they don't end up in situations like FTX, which could ruin one's entire, work reputation. So that is those are things that I think are super, super important and make this space very unique from, traditionally marketing any other products.
That's actually true. And on the platform, I know on Facebook, you can't even run any crypto ad. You cannot. You dare not even say you want to run any ad that has to do with crypto anything. Because most people they have this belief that anything crypto related is scam, is fraud, it's not tangible, they can't see it, they can't feel it. It's about scamming people and everything. So I get where the regulations, I understand why the regulations are there, because they are still being skeptical about it and everything. But yeah, I think as time grows and then as more people are adopting crypto, more people are coming into the Web3 space and adopting the blockchain technology, I think we'll see a period where those regulations will be lifted off, and then the restrictions will just disappear.
Then, we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, we can only hope and wait, right? Okay, so since Web2 platforms don't want us to advertise our projects, and then even if we have to go through, we have to be careful, just like you mentioned, about how we'll go about it and be really open about it. So what are some of the popular platforms and technologies and tools that marketers in the Web3 space are currently using to reach and engage with their target audience outside Web2 platforms, Web2 tools?
So when you say aside Web2 tools, what do you mean? Because I'm not really clear on, because it's still it's still regular marketing channels, so I'm not really clear. And there are no Web3 communication tools as far as I know.
Oh, okay. But some are really coming up though, because there's one I know, Web3M. They are like a platform where you can run marketing campaigns for Web3 projects. And I also had a meeting with someone who showed me a demo of their platform today on Profiler.
Do they have 1 billion users? If they don't have, they're not useful. I'm sorry.
They don't have billion users. I'm just saying that these are some of the ones I know.
There's no large scale platform yet.
No large platform yet, but those two I know. And the guy that showed me the demo today. Okay, so this is how that one works. They have like a list of addresses that once you click on it here, it takes you to the profile of the person. So let's say you have a gaming project, right? And then you want to advertise your gaming project, or you want to get the word out there about your project. So once you sign up on this platform, you get to see a list of target audience. So you get to see by the projects they're interested in, maybe it's GIFI, maybe it's NFTs and stuff. So it's been grouped. I mean, it still looks like a bit complicated, but then I think they are getting there. And no, they do not have 1 billion users. They have 500,000 users. I think that is actually something in Web3. That is
That's super
actually,
interesting.
they have
Um,
500 users, and it's grew by wallet addresses and social media platforms, Twitter, yeah, Twitter basically. No Telegram, no Discord, they're just Twitter and their
yeah,
addresses. So I think as it progresses, we'll actually see more
yeah.
platforms and more
So
better
maybe I can
platforms.
share some tools. I mean, can you hear
Yeah.
me?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, we do.
Okay, awesome. So I think one of the largest platforms for Web3 has been Twitter, just because of how fast information spreads on the
Mm-hmm.
platform.
That's
There's
true.
unfortunately still a lot of spam. There's a lot of spam associated with this space, but it's a really interesting place to spread the word, especially if you're able to convince people in the community to share about a particular tool or a
Mm-hmm.
particular project, right? So that's still one of the largest tools. The second one I think is search engine optimization, just because many people still start their buyer intent on Google search, and so Google search can be a really useful platform for getting the word out there. So SEO remains a very strong tool. Um, and then there's another tool I'm very familiar with, which is it's called Dune Analytics. And Dune Analytics is basically if you've got a product that has
Mm-hmm.
smart contracts or that has a smart contract, it can help you pull statistics based on your smart contract, and you can like analyze, you can filter stuff, you can write your own queries, um, and just help you better understand what people are doing with your smart contract and what people are doing on chain on your platform. It's also very broad, so you can, for example, just use analytics to track whatever is happening on all the NFTs on Polygon, for example, or on Ethereum, right? It's a very robust tool, right? So it lets you do so many other things. You can even just build your own analytics dashboard for somebody else's smart contracts if you find the smart contracts in public. So that's a very useful tool. Um, I think for on the B2B side of things, we still use a lot of LinkedIn because that's where business decision
Yeah.
makers are. We still use a lot of LinkedIn to reach people. And then in the offline aspect of things, we still use a lot of event marketing. So I've been to two events in the last year for Sequence, my former employers, and totally in the last year I think they had been to 6 events, right? Just because events is where people come to engage and communicate and share new
Mm-hmm.
ideas. Um, Events is where where you can learn about the new technology. So if you're a business in that space, you want to put yourself ahead of all these people who are going to come 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, 20,000 people, and share your value with them. And these events don't necessarily have to be Web3 or crypto focused events. They can be traditional events as well. So
Mm-hmm.
for one example, we were at the Games Developer Conference in San Francisco a few weeks ago. And what we were basically doing was showcasing our developer toolkit for people who are building on Unity and Unreal Engine, and letting them know that they can use our developer stack and they can build Web3 elements without having to leave that developer environment. And so it really depends on what your business is and what you're trying to do, and how you provide value. But similar concepts, similar platforms still take hold. Um, with respect to doing ads, we mentioned earlier that for a bunch of products, ads are basically blocked. But it really also really depends on what services you're providing, right? Like I know folks who provide virtual card services that's on the blockchain, right? It's Stellar or on the Circle network with USDC, and they're able to get their ads approved. So it really depends on what you're doing. So yeah, just keep an open mind and explore as many channels as possible.
Mm-hmm. Like they will say, word, word, word.
Yeah,
Thanks for sharing these tools. I think I'll actually go look at that one that has to do with the smart contracting and just try to understand,
yeah.
because I haven't heard of that before, to be honest. I think I'll go look at it again. No, not look at it again. Look at it. I haven't heard of it before. Okay, so let's talk about your experience again. Can you share some examples of successful marketing campaigns or strategies that you have implemented in the Web3 space and what made them effective?
Yeah, sure. Two campaigns come to mind. So at Bitcoins, because we were an exchange and we couldn't run ads on any platform. Our ads kept getting kept getting blocked over and over again. Um,
Mm,
we had to quickly look for an alternative channel that we could run, and we did two things, but I'll pick one. One was basically we used a very nano influencer campaign and found regular people who had just made their first crypto purchases for the first time, and we got them to post about the company and what we do on social media. And the second was I basically built and ran an SEO campaign because I had
mhm,
done some research and saw that the search intent for people who wanted to buy and sell crypto was increasing, but there were very few platforms you could just instantly go buy, sell stuff. And so my plan was really simple: target very important keywords and use events in the sector to write about 5 blog posts a week. So we're publishing a blog post every day, minimum
mhm,
300-word blog post, sometimes very, very, even much longer blog posts, and ensuring that they're properly linked to our landing pages, our public facing landing pages, right?
mhm,
Then I also, again, just to support my efforts in SEO, also did a backlink campaign, reached out to every business, finance, and tech publication just to share what we're building. And many of them wanted to actually publish blog posts about the company. But each time they'll publish a blog post, we made sure that links were included in in the important sections, and that really helped with our SEO ranking. And in 3 months from when we started this project, we're ranking number one for purchase-led searches for crypto in Nigeria. So that was huge success. I would say we really did well. Um,
mhm.
yeah, it really did well, and even up until last year, the company still saw results from the from that SEO campaign. So you want
SEO.
me to share a second one?
Oh, yes, please. Please do.
Okay, so the second success I'll pick from Bundle Africa. And Bundle was a very interesting project for me because I was hired before there was a public launch. And so I was hired before there was a public launch. And so I was responsible for building a very early community of about 100 people who were beta testing this product. But we were also educating them about like crypto space and like why we're building what we're building. Keeping in mind that Bundle has a very social element in its exchange business. So we're one of the very few platforms, even today, where you can send and request crypto from your friends. And we're going to build a ton of stuff on top of that social layer. Eventually, it wasn't built, but that was the goal. And so, basically, building and engaging this early community of people, having them test the product, having them give feedback, giving them rewards for giving feedback, having them like brutally run to the product multiple times, so we could find a lot of user onboarding gaps, user retention gaps, just usability gaps, and like technical things that weren't clear that we needed to fix. So we did that. But what was very interesting was we were able to turn this 100 people community into a 10,000 people wait list. And we built a referral campaign, which was basically if you share the link with your friends and your friends sign up with your unique link, every friend that signs up, you get a reward for that. And if you sign up 20 friends, you get the maximum reward. But one of the most unique things here was that our community wasn't broad. It was actually an invite-only community of students. So we had picked Nigerian students in campuses all across the country. And that made sure that the rewards we were offering to them were actually useful rewards. So for example, earphones, for example, cinema tickets, credits for airtime for their phones, or data as well for their phones, right? Things that students, we thought that students would really like, but that weren't too expensive for us as a small company at the time. And what this meant was that before we even launched Bundle publicly, we already had about 10,000 people waiting to use the products, right? Just from this our 100 people community. So that was a campaign that did really, really well. And we eventually turned it off because there was Saturday where there were so many people coming in. We realized that we had reached our peak. and we couldn't afford to keep the campaign running, so we had to turn it off, and then reward our, our existing waitlist.
Wow. Um, that's actually quite impressive. So I'm giving you your flowers. Receive your flowers. Accept your flowers.
Thank you.
That was actually fun. That was a successful marketing campaign. And SEO. I think SEO is just so amazing. It's a long-term investment that if you put your all into it now, it's something that you can yield the results years and years and years to come. SEO is actually really super effective, regardless of if you're in Web 2 or Web 3. And I also think referral too, it's also an amazing campaign. Because word of mouth, hey, super powerful. Super
Very
powerful. Like most people, before they buy anything, even use anything, they will ask someone, have you used this before? Have you heard about these people? What's your review and stuff like that? Just by getting feedback from one person can make up their mind or change their mind about something. So the strategies we employ are actually really, really good. And I'm not surprised at the results that you got, as they're super effective marketing strategies. So which brings me to my next question. And so as a marketer in Web3 space, right? What are some of the ethical considerations that marketers need to keep in mind while working in the Web3 space? I know you mentioned it before when it comes to running ads and everything, but what are some of the ethical considerations they need to have in mind? Like, okay, I'm working in Web3, a whole different ballgame for when I was in Web2. What are the things I need to know concerning data privacy, security, and transparency?
So, I mean, the very first thing to know is that there are a lot of scammers in this space. So, you might be working for a company that you think is legitimate, but you're working for scammers. So, do your own research, like they say in this space. It's important to do your own research, and it's important for you to actually understand what this is and why it needs to exist. I think many people just hop in and they find that they're being taken advantage of because they refuse to do that work of just doing their own research and understanding what's happening, right? And then the second thing in the space with security is, I mean, it really depends on the type of products that you're handling or what you're doing. So at some of the companies I have worked at, we're not particularly holding any assets. So although security was great for us, because we're not holding assets, we're not exposed. We're not exposed to, some of the issues, right? Compared to platforms where they're holding assets on behalf of, customers, and they're holding like millions of dollars in assets, right? That's one thing. With regards to transparency, I think it's very important to, if you're working for an exchange, for example, to communicate that, today's results are not the same as future results. I think that's something that many people don't really have to communicate to people that if they're buying something today and it's gone up by 20% in the last week, it might not be 20% next week, right? It's also important to take as much consent as possible when people are purchasing stuff. So one of the very funny things that's happened over time is user experience makes it easier to buy things. But what you actually want to do is include some friction so that people don't make very stupid decisions. You want to include some friction, right? And this is maybe just you working with product team, make sure that they're including some friction. So it's maybe one extra step or two extra steps more difficult for people to make mistakes, especially in high volume transactions. And then on the security side of things, you want to constantly communicate to your customers on how to keep themselves secure and protected in this space. So people shouldn't be doing things like giving their MetaMask seed phrase, filling it in a form, answering to some random Twitter handle that is posing as some company support, right? You also want to be able to ensure that everybody in your company is following these steps. Everybody in your company is following these steps, and people are making sure they're not asking, like customer support people are not asking customers for their IDs or their passwords or something that is so important. And so unfortunately, the privacy and security side of things is often out of marketers' hands. It's often a product problem, but it's still something you need to make sure that like you're communicating at least to the public. How can they stay secure? Many tools today have 2FA, right? So how can people make sure that they're using the 2FA in the tool, whether it's SMS or it's via an authenticator? those are things that I think are super important to communicate, and many people who even just buy assets in that space don't do enough protection. So yeah, that's just my advice for marketers in that space.
Okay, we're still on the security, regulatory, and everything. So I just want to ask that, are there any regulatory challenges or legal issues that marketers may encounter in the Web3 space?
I think there are a lot. It depends on the country and what your product is doing, but there's often a lot of stuff. There's stuff with regards to buying, stuff with regards to selling. If facilitating transactions in certain countries, you have to have certain licenses. There's actually a lot. There's certain what's the word? There's certain what's the word I want to use now? There's certain countries where things are just not allowed. Like in Nigeria, for example, you're not allowed to buy and sell via the regular payment rails. So companies have to figure out like different peer-to-peer ways they can make transactions happen. Some companies have basically even shut down their entire Nigerian entities so that they're not exposed to any court cases, and like their team members in Nigeria are not arrested, stuff like that. So I think if you're going to work in that space and you're going to publicly talk about your job, you want to be very careful. Depending on the country you're in and what the rules say, you want to be very, very careful so you're not targeted or picked. But like, yeah, basically just doing your own research.
Sure. Okay, so let me try to move away from all the serious questions. Okay. Let me ask. I already know the answer to this question, but then for some people who just want to know or who tend to ask us that silly question anytime they hear that you're in the Web3 space. And so one of the first questions they will ask is, which I'm asking you, I already know the answer, but then I'm going to, because they've been asking me too, and I'm sure they've also asked you too. So, do marketers in Web3 only use cryptocurrency for transactions?
So you mean like as a marketing professional? No, the answer is no. I think, I mean, many organizations you work with will encourage you to, but they wouldn't necessarily force you to do anything. I think for a bunch of people I've worked with have gotten paid in fiat, but some other people have gotten paid in like BNB, for example. So yeah, so it really depends on where you work, but mostly no, I don't think you use, like, there's tons of stuff. There's tons of people who are working in spaces where the company is not even interacting with cryptocurrency at all. There's companies that are doing things like node uptime, making sure the nodes are working well, and they don't really have to touch things. They're basically infrastructure focused. So it really depends on, the space you're in and what you do in that space or what your company does.
Thank you for answering that question. I also have another one. Do marketers need to learn coding to work in Web3?
No, I don't think so. I haven't had to code because I work in this space, so I don't think so. It's very unlikely that it would happen. But I think on some level, you're required to be technically educated enough to be able to communicate to your audience. But keeping in mind that if you're working in a company, there's often people that are knowledgeable. They're knowledgeable enough, so they can put you through. You can always ask them questions why things are a certain way. If you think things should be done a different way, they can also, provide inputs and can help you fix technical issues. Yeah.
Sure. So, yeah. Okay, so some people, they believe that Web3 is just a passing fad. Like, it's just something that will come and go, like every other thing that's come and go. And they are skeptics. I mean, I was having a conversation with this older man one time, and then he was telling me that he work in, because the first thing that came to his when I told him I work in Web3 was, oh, you work in crypto, you sell Bitcoin. And I'm like, no, I did not sell Bitcoin. I tried to explain. Oh, everyone knows I tried to explain. I tried to be convinced. He kept saying, crypto was what this guy, Osh Poppy, that was where he was transferring all his money to. He was doing Bitcoin. They scam. They do this, they do that. That's just going to come and go. That man was even the one that inspired this question I'm asking you. Because I believe it's just a passing part. It's just going to come and go. It's something. That's where people go to hide their money. They don't store their money in offshore account again. It's now crypto. And so they also believe that Web3 too is just going to come and go. I mean, they think crypto is a scam. It's just going to come and go. And it's been around for how many years now? And I don't even think it's going anywhere anytime soon. So what would you say to those skeptics who question Web3, the longevity and the impact on the marketing industry?
It really depends on again what you do and where you are and like your country. So for example, I know a bunch of people who are like in the US who absolutely believe that it's an entire fad and it doesn't really solve any problem. But for me in Nigeria, I mean, I still use, even while working for my previous employer, while getting paid in fiat, I still had to use crypto to get paid in Naira a lot of times. And so for me, I can see what the use case is and I can see what the impact is on my own life as somebody who's working remotely and internationally. So again, it really depends. For many people who were speculating on assets and were hoping that prices will go up forever, I think it was an unreasonable expectation. And so what we are seeing happen is, I don't know if you're familiar with something called the Gartner hype cycle, is where we're pretty much at the end of the hype cycle. So there's been the hype, and the hype has gone really, really high. But like the hype is over now, fortunately. And so yes, I think there's always that skepticism and about whether it's going to last long. But it's like with anything else, really, even when the internet came, there was a hype, but like the internet is still here today, and it's even more useful than ever.
Sure.
And I think the same thing as well when people started to implement social tools on the internet, and it was called Web2, and there was a lot of hype about that. And today it's just expected that if you sign up to a work tool, it should allow you add your team members, right? So I think eventually a bunch of the paradigms become so normal that we're not calling it any web thing anymore. We're just using these tools, whether to send money, to receive money, to buy something in a game, to send something to a friend. We're just using it like we would use any software or app every day. And so if the user experience team and the teams building in this space do their job really well, over a couple of years, we actually shouldn't hear this term anymore. It should just be normal if they do their jobs really well. If they don't do their jobs really, really well, they'll still be explaining to people in 5 years' time what is Web3, which means that it's a completely failed sector, in my opinion. So yeah, that's what I'm going to say.
Yeah, fair enough, to be honest. We can only hope that people get to adopt it more, and those who are at the forefront of educating people, they get to do their job well. So I have to stop here hearing from crypto is a scam, Web3 is whatever. We can only hope and cross our fingers. So what advice do you have for marketers who are interested in pursuing a career in this field, and how can they stay updated with the latest trends and developments? Because we both know that things happen so fast in this industry. Things happen so quick that you can sleep and wake up and then you just hear a news that is just going to turn everything upside down. So for people who are trying to get into this space, especially in marketing, they're trying to pursue a career, what advice do you have for them, and how can they stay updated with the latest trends and developments?
Yeah, sure. So I will say that for one, marketers need to be well educated. I think it's a space that requires you to be so educated about what's happening. I've had to read in the last few months, a ton of what's it called? Ethereum improvement proposals. They're called EIPs. I've had to read a ton of them to just understand certain technical things and see for myself if it makes sense. I've also read stuff about many different types of ERCs, Ethereum contracts as well. So there's always like a space to learn more things. Things move so fast, like you said. And then to stay up to date is just reading. I guess you can subscribe to the Ethereum Foundation's blog, which I like to read. They're typically very updated, and they say or you can follow them on social media. They post updates regularly. You can also just read websites. I like to read CoinDesk, Blockworks. They often talk about new things in the industry, and there's often a lot of opinion about what's happening in those spaces as well. So I would say just being able to read and being able to learn gives one an edge, even if it's just for the companies you work at. You get to sometimes be the first to implement or communicate certain concepts to the public, and that's very important just to get a normal edge in that space.
That's actually quite helpful. So my last question. I always like to ask my guests this question just to get different opinions, different answers. So, how do you see the future of marketing in Web3 evolving? One, and what opportunities or potential disruptions do you anticipate in the coming years?
So how do I see the space evolving for marketing? I think hopefully there's more legal frameworks that actually make sense so that we know what to do and what to say clearly, and we're not like having to do a lot of experiments, because that's something that takes a lot of time. And for some context, I spent like 3 weeks one time just tweaking copy for ads on LinkedIn because nobody was sure what they wanted, and it made absolutely no sense. I wouldn't have to do that in any other space. I would just post what I wanted to post, right? So hoping that such things make it easier for us. But I'm also looking to see more and more companies that are not Web3 companies do very interesting things with digital assets and tokens, especially tokens that are like one-to-one, and they're not particularly going to go high or go low, but like they're useful for people to just show off. Especially in like the loyalty space. I think that's going to be very interesting to see how we can drive loyalty with tokens on chain, right? That's going to be, huge. That's going to be huge. In terms of the future, I think now that a bunch of hype has died down, and there's a lot of people trying to build, I think we're going to see in this time more utility than just buying tokens or buying some random JPEG that's going to be worth nothing in 6 months' time. I think we're going to see more utility. Spaces where I would like to see some utility, or that I think there'll be utility, is one, remittances. That's like one of the no-brainer, easiest thing to do in this space, is moving assets or moving monetary value from one place to another, especially now that you have stable coins become even more popular. If you check CoinMarketCap, you're seeing stable coins become more popular. So stable coins like USDC, like BUSD, they're useful for actually settling value across the world, right? And that means that remittances can be cheaper than they're currently are today. They cost a lot of money today. So hopefully we get to see that. The second thing, I think the second industry I think is going to be impacted a lot is going to be the gaming industry, because the gaming industry is a place where people are already used to buying digital assets. And what often, whether it's skins or an arrow or a sword or a helmet or whatever it is, what often happens is many people, when the game eventually gets shut down or when the game isn't up anymore, they can't do anything with those assets. The assets are pretty much lost in their accounts in the game. But with blockchain, you can have those assets on chain, and people can, for example, move it out of the game. They can trade it instantly or set a price if it's something that is rare. Something that is rare, for example, and they can, I can buy something today and maybe in the future I can just give my friend in the same game, right? Maybe my friend needs the helmet. I can share with my friend, and those things are very useful. I think that's where we're going to see a lot of impact. Some of the largest gaming companies I know are experimenting with, NFT heroes or NFT skins, which, are speculative, but they're also doing a ton of stuff on technologies around ERC-1155s, which are SFTs, basically an asset that is duplicated, right? So for example, if you play a game, maybe like Subway Surfers, the coin that you get in the game has like millions of it, right? It has many copies. And so SFTs can enable people even trade inside games, and it can make the games more valuable, but also more interesting for people who spend a ton of hours and a ton of their time and a bunch of money, playing games. Right now, you play a game, you spend a lot of money and a lot of your time, you get a reward, but you can't do much with it. You can't even just share coins to your friend. And so, yeah, I think that's a space that's going to be very well impacted by Web3.
Sure. Yeah. I agree. Actually. I agree. And you can only wait if all these things will actually happen. And if they eventually do happen, it will be super cool. I mean, super, 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 super cool. And yes, so I know I said that was my final question. Yeah, I think I said that was my final question, but I have another question to ask. So for
Okay,
the
no
sake of
worries.
people who are looking to break into this space, who are listening to this, or who are going to listen to this podcast, um, where can they and they're looking for their next opportunities, where do you think they can start from, or where should they be looking at?
I think they should be looking at communities in this space. There's a lot of communities who are, helping with educating each other or educating themselves about this space. I think communities are very nice. If you just search Web3 community, you would find a bunch of them on the internet. But you can also just check job sites, a bunch of job sites. You can use like blockchain, crypto, Web3 terms to filter for jobs that you're looking for, and you see a bunch of jobs. And thankfully, one of the really good things about this industry is that most companies are globally remote, so you're not essentially tethered to working in companies only in your own country. Depending on how your country is favorable to this or not, to this space or not, right? So you don't have to work for your own company. You can work for another company somewhere else. And so that's super interesting. And that would be the first thing I would just do is just look for communities. I will read up a bunch of stuff. I will read the Bitcoin white paper. I will read the Ethereum white paper, just to learn more. And then I will start to look for opportunities. But keeping in mind that you're just transferring your skills from one type of software if you already work in tech, or from another type of product to another type of product. The differences are not that much in your day-to-day, for the day-to-day job. Yeah.
Thank you. So, do you have any word of advice? What to share with us?
I don't have any advice. Just be careful out there because there are many scammers. I
Oh
don't
yeah,
have.
there are
I
plenty.
don't
Like, there are
think I have any.
plenty. And
Yeah.
scammers. Christ. I've actually encountered one or two. And then the first thing they try to come with you, they got to come to you and say, okay, they have this offer, they'll pay this amount. And next thing you know, they're asking for your wallet address. Like, can I have your
Yeah.
wallet
You see,
address?
that's a. So if you didn't, yeah, I mean, so if you didn't know, you would have thought it was a what's it called? It was a legit thing, and you'd have maybe fallen into a scam or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, they're asking for your wallet address. The first time that happened to me, I was like, okay, why are you asking for my wallet address? I don't understand. It just started talking
Mm-hmm.
to me. Okay, what's your project about? Couldn't give me an answer. I think the person ended up blocking me, whoever he or she was, or they them. So they
Yeah.
ended up blocking me because it was screaming red flag, red flag, red flag. So today's
Yeah.
episode was quite informative. Even me myself, I'm calling myself a Web3 marketer, actually learned a lot by listening to you today
Thank you
and for
so
answering
much
all our
for
questions.
inviting me.
And thank you. Thank you for agreeing to do this with me. Agreeing to do this with us today. We appreciate it. And we hope that we can also have you on our podcast next time we call you. Come and share
Sure, no
some of your
problem.
knowledge with us again.
I would love to be here.
Okay, we'd love to have you again. And that's a wrap for today's episode of Web3 Quick Bites. Thank you so much to our special guest for sharing his insights and expertise on building a career in Web3 marketing. I hope you guys all learned a lot from him today. So if you have any questions or feedback on today's episode, don't hesitate to reach out to me on my social media platforms or send an email to web3quickbites@gmail.com. Thanks again to Olabijo for joining us today. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. We'll be back next week with more exciting content. So be sure to subscribe and tune in. See you next week. Bye.